I got off my medication after 8 months of being on it, and I've been in remission for the last 6 years.
As a child, I was always overweight, and then growing up, I didn't really think much about diet. I just ate what I ate, and I enjoyed the foods that I enjoyed. And things got out of control, I'd say, when I was in my early 20s. I knew that something had to be done. I was worried about having an early death like my grandfather had, and I wanted to change my life. I wanted to get back to fitness, and I wanted to feel good about my body. So I did some research, and I started off doing a low carbohydrate approach to eating. And this gave me some results for short-term weight loss. I was exercising a lot as well, and I got to peak physical condition, and I thought things are fantastic. But then I checked my blood profile, and what I found then was that I had a raised lipid profile, and this really shocked me. And knowing that I had a family history of heart disease, I felt, oh, maybe this is my fate. This is my genes, I can't change it. And I lived with that for quite a while. Then my father died suddenly whilst driving of a heart attack. And again, I knew that that was something that might happen to me after a certain amount of years, and I really wanted to try and make a difference to that risk. So I did some more research, and I found a whole food plant-based diet approach has helped thousands and thousands of people not only to lose weight, but also to reduce their lipid profiles and even reverse cardiovascular disease. So I thought, let's give it a try. So I did, and to my amazement, I had some incredible results. It was the only way of eating that helped me to reduce my lipid profiles, which is why I am so passionate about this. I mean, as I said, my father and my grandfather both died young, and I wanted to be able to have the chance to see my children and their children and maybe even their children grow up. And now I feel like I've got that chance.
For plant-based diets, there's a growing amount of literature, and really literature actually that goes back a couple of decades, showing that by adopting a predominantly plant-based diet, that you can have a dramatic improvement on your lipids, you can have a dramatic improvement on measures of inflammation, and also that you can really reduce your risk of having a cardiovascular event.
I grew up with the chronic ear infections and allergies, and when I stopped consuming dairy, it was dramatic. I noticed that I was not responding to these hay fever incidents I would have all the time, no more ear infections, just a number of different, there's just like an overall thing that happens that you feel better. But I would say primarily those were the two things that jumped out at me. I've had better experience with seeing the overall effect with my husband, who converted, he's English, converted to a vegan diet. So with him, we were able to see his high blood pressure numbers drop. We were able to see that he was able to lose weight a lot easier. He had chronic eczemas and very, very dry skin. All of that, honestly, I mean, it didn't go away like overnight, but it's gone now, and he swears by it. So I was able to see it better in him because I was eating really well up until that point. So the dairy was kind of the last thing, and that's where I was able to notice that, like, that one last thing. Otherwise, it might have been a little more difficult. But with him, I'll tell you right off the bat, he just, you know, again, like I said, he swears by it. He talks to his doctor about it. He thinks he's crazy, but but he is not managed any longer on medication. So that's pretty dramatic.
So fortunately, knock on wood, I haven't had to cure any ailments with plant-based nutrition for myself personally, but I will say that as a physician who's 32 years old, I have felt so much energy, even though I'm working a zillion hours a week. I feel so much energy based on what I'm eating. So because I'm eating so many plants and whole foods, I feel like I can make it through a weekend on call, I can make it through my long hours, I can make it through clinic, I can make it through hours and hours and hours standing in the cath lab with lead on because of what I'm eating and the nutrition and all of the whole foods and plants that I'm consuming.
It's quite exciting actually. I went plant-based in 2015 and I went down that path for a number of reasons. Firstly, there was an ethical argument to going vegan, but also myself, I was facing some profound chronic health issues at the time. I was fairly overweight and suffering from high blood pressure. And I knew as a clinician that if I didn't have these things sorted out ASAP, that they would lead to many problems down the track. So as soon as I went plant-based, within a couple of weeks, I was noticing dramatic weight loss. I had much more energy, I felt better, and over the years, my bloods have looked fantastic, my cholesterol has plummeted, and I continually maintain a very high amount of energy and a love for plant-based medicine.
When I first adopted a whole food plant-based diet, my body loved it. Within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my waist, my high blood pressure normalized, my high cholesterol normalized, and I felt great waking up in a nice lean light body every day. And it was a ringing validation that this is what this body should be eating. And in my medical practice, when I had patients who were overweight, high blood pressure, diabetes, put them on a whole food plant-based diet, the same transformation happens. The obesity melts away, the arteries open up, the high blood pressure comes down, the joints stop hurting, the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing, the migraine headaches go away, and they turn into normal, healthy people. It's the greatest health transformation I've ever seen, and it makes medicine fun to see your patients get healthy.
Yeah, so I actually went on a plant-based diet because I'd had 2 separate breast health scares, and I wanted to do everything I could to reduce my future risk of potentially getting breast cancer. So went on a plant-based diet, so lower in fat and based on whole foods. And first off, I get to rest a little easier at night knowing I'm doing what I can. But the other thing is that I have less breast pains. I used to have really bad breast pain every month, and now it's much better. I actually don't have as many menstrual cramps either. I don't know if that's a TMI, but it was surprisingly effective at helping with that. And I have more energy than I've had. Honestly, I'm in my 30s now, and I have way more energy than I had in my 20s. So that's been a pretty great side effect.
Well, I come from a really unhealthy background, I have to say. I grew up in North Dakota, and it was, meat and potatoes and more meat and more potatoes and more meat and more potatoes kind of all the time. That was the way we ate. But I'm happy to tell you that when I went vegetarian when I was 23 and vegan at 31. And so at the time I didn't have weight issues or health problems. And in the however many years have passed by since that time, it's not that I've had to reverse an illness, it's that I hopefully have prevented a few. So knock on wood, things have gone all right so far.
People often ask me what happened to me when I started eating a whole foods plant-based diet, and I'm really lucky because I made this conversion when I was 38 years old, and I did not have anything serious wrong with me. I was overweight. I mean, let me put it in more clear terms. I was fat. I used to tell people I was big boned. I used to buy clothing that was loose so that I thought it was flattering and made me look slim, but the bottom line was I was really overweight by probably about 40 pounds. So when I adopted this diet, no heart attacks, I didn't have cancer, nothing dreadful going on. I had just, like a lot of people, over the course of my adult life, become increasingly more sedentary and had my eating habits degenerated over a long period of time. So I changed my diet, started eating a whole foods plant-based diet. The weight fell off. My skin looked better. The energy change was astounding. I mean, I still to this day at the age of 62 have more energy than most people half my age. And a really interesting thing happened, which is me, who had never been athletically inclined, started running marathons. That shocked a lot of people. So all good changes, and I'm happy to report 62, take no drugs, have no diseases, haven't been treated for anything, still have a full head of hair, clear skin, clear mind, all good. And so I was lucky. I had the privilege to make the choice to do this without having to be scared half out of my mind to do it, because a lot of people who come here, they really don't have a lot of choice. It's like, change your diet tomorrow because this could help you save your life, as opposed to me, who got to make the choice before anything terrible happened, and I really consider that quite a gift.
When I was starting, my main concern was cardiovascular disease, and it still is. But there are some other things that have happened along the way where I have begun to develop relationships with other physicians who are finding that cardiovascular disease isn't the only disease that is turned around by this. We mentioned diabetes, we mentioned hypertension, we mentioned strokes, we mentioned vascular dementia, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, allergies, asthma, renal disease. The list goes on. Never before in medicine have we had a tool so powerful in our toolbox.
I went to get a life insurance policy test, and I found out that I had a lot of the diseases my patients had. I had high cholesterol, I was hypertensive at 35 years old, and I had fatty liver. And this was a shock to me because I thought I was healthy. I thought I was doing what everybody else was doing. And so that really made me sit and think, are we doing this correctly? Is the Western medicine way of doing things correct? Because look, we spend more money on healthcare than any other country in the world. We represent 5% of the world's population, but take 75% of the prescription drugs. And yet we have one of the shortest longevity of any of the civilized countries.
I've noticed a number of differences, actually, a number of improvements. Minor improvements, but things that have made a difference to me. First thing was my energy levels. My energy levels just soared. My exercise tolerance soared as well, so my ability to run was longer, and my recovery was a lot quicker as well, which was amazing. For a few days afterwards, I would wake up with aching limbs, but now I can wake up the next morning feeling great. And the other thing is sleep as well. My sleep quality is a lot better, and I'm finding that I actually need less sleep as a result of going whole food, plant-based. And also noticed a couple of other things. I had a few sort of odd skin issues now and then as well, and that seems to have completely cleared up as well, which is great. So it's wonderful to see these changes, and it's just wonderful to see changes in people's health around me, my family and my relatives and friends as well.
Personally, I feel like I was heading down a road like most Americans. I was young-ish, in my 20s, slightly overweight, not very physically active, did not know anything about healthful eating. I grew up on a standard American diet with a lot of Southern food and a lot of processed food. So I could see where that was going, probably going where most people in my family were heading, which is high blood pressure, heart disease, high cholesterol. But I was able to educate myself and adopted a vegan diet and saw all the potential risk for that disappear and almost literally melt away. I lost some of that excess weight. I started exercising because I had more energy. I educated myself on what a healthful diet really looks like. Lots of beans, grains, fruits, and vegetables. So I feel like I was more of a case of avoiding a certain path and prevention, and that's really the ideal for sure. But certainly for people who have chronic diseases, there is more than enough hope for turning that around.
This was in my early 30s when I was diagnosed with Graves' disease. And for those of you who don't know what Graves' disease is, it's actually quite rare. Only happens in 1 in 200 females, mainly females, but it can happen in males, but it's hyperthyroid. So my symptoms were actually very severe and uncomfortable because I was losing weight, I was having severe palpitations. So at any given time, my pulse rate was 90, 95 beats per minute, but yet I was still working full time and just, seeing my patients. And when I saw the endocrinologist, she said, we have to put you on medications. I mean, it's the only way. And Julie, she said, I hope you will react well to these 2 medications because it's either this one, and then it's radiation or surgery, right? So the first drug I took, I reacted very poorly to it. Within about 2 weeks, I developed drug-induced hepatitis, which is one of the side effects of this drug. So when that happened, she had to take me off the drugs, wait till my liver normalized. So that month was horrible because I was on no treatments, right? And then she put me on the second drug. And she says, I really hope you don't react to this one. So thankfully, it went okay. I wasn't itching and having all the symptoms that I was having with the first drug. But even though I was on that medication and the numbers were normalizing, so my thyroid values were normalizing, I wasn't feeling great. I was still experiencing a lot of the symptoms, and it hit me very hard at that point. This was in 2012, and so I was already practicing for a good 6-7 years, and I helped so many patients, but for some reason I couldn't help myself. I've tried lots of things and I couldn't get my condition under control. And there were nights where I came home from work, I couldn't cook, I would just lay on the couch, I couldn't move. It was just so difficult, and I had tremors in my legs because it also affects your muscles. So I remember driving and my foot would be shaking, you know, as I'm pressing on the acceleration and the brake. Like, I couldn't control my muscles very well. And I remember it, and I went vegetarian in high school because as a kid I always knew about animal welfare. But I didn't have a very supportive network, so it was kind of off and on, off and on. But at that point, I asked myself, what is stopping me from making the final change, right? And so at 32, I remember my sister said, hey, let's do a 10-day vegan fast together, okay? Let's do 10 days of this juice cleanse. And I said, I'm on board, let's do this. After 10 days of this juice cleanse, and it was amazing. That 10 days, my heart rate had calmed down. Like, I felt much better during those 10 days. And after that, I came back, and I remember my husband, you know, he's preparing the meal, you know, the meal after 10 days of juicing. He was making, you know, he was grilling me fish and making me broccoli. I remember I took one bite of that fish, and I almost threw up. The taste, I don't know what it was, I couldn't eat it. I tried it again the next day, and it made me feel sick to the stomach. And I looked at myself, and why am I forcing myself to eat this animal protein, this animal flesh, when my body is obviously rejecting it? So I said, you know what, I'm gonna listen to my body, and I said, I'm gonna go forward and eat what my body's asking me. So all I wanted were vegetables and fruits and salads and soups, and that's sort of what I did. And I never went back since. Yeah, and guess what? I got off my medication after 8 months of being on it, and I've been in remission for the last 6 years.